All right, guys, for today's video, we're going to give you a little top 5 list of my top 5 favorite crops in the game. These are not necessarily going to be what the most effective way to make money is. There's better ways to do that. But things like generators and logging, things like that, are not going to be included in this video. This is purely off crops. So my criteria for this list, number one, how much money does it make? If it doesn't make money, then obviously I don't want to do it. So why would I do barley when I can do wheat? Same crop, but one makes more money. Things like that. Number two, how enjoyable is it? Like I said, generators aren't in here because those aren't any fun. You just plant them down and you're not even playing the game. That will come into a factor in for some of this list. And number three, how hard is it to get into? As in, is it super expensive to get into? So something like cotton, for example, is not on this list. I know it makes a lot of money, but it's very hard to get into. It costs hundreds of thousands of in-game currency to even start that up. So it's not really practical to start a playthrough with that. And then lastly is how scalable is it, right? So we'll get into a little bit like something like, we'll say grass, for example, is you can only get so big because the AI doesn't do everything. Whereas a grain crop, the AI can do everything, so you can grow that infinitely. So that does play into the list as well. So anyways, guys, thanks for watching this video. If you guys like it, please like, favorite, subscribe, comment, all that fun stuff. And please put in the comments what your favorite crop is, what's your favorite way to make money. Do you like growing crops? Do you do animals? Do you do that sort of thing? So let me know what you guys think. Anyways, let's get into the list. All right, guys. So the first crop we have here is rice. The reason why I have rice on this list, it's not necessarily the best crop in the game, right? You're not going to make a ton of money from it. But I do have it in here because it's a pretty low cost of entry, right? So you can obviously plant the rice for pretty cheap. The best part is the equipment for it is very cheap. So if we scroll over to rice here, right? 95K for the harvester, 25K for the planter, and the smallest trailer, and you're going to be just fine. That's all you need. $130,000 and you're into it, right? You don't need all this fancy equipment. You don't need to get big stuff. The reason why it's not higher on the list is simply because it's not scalable at all, right? Because there's only the one harvester, there's only the one planter, you can only go this fast. Which when you're starting out early on a map, not that big a deal, but as you get bigger and bigger and bigger, it's just kind of tedious. This is not that big of a harvester. You won't be able to scale this up very well, or you're going to have like 10 AI working, which isn't necessarily that good either. And the other downside is you have to manually build the rice fields in this build menu, which is expensive, right? Because it's not only a hassle to do this, but it's kind of expensive too. So yes, you can build them, but it's going to cost you a pretty penny to do that. And the bigger you get, the more expensive that is. Also, you have to micromanage the planting, and so every growth cycle, you have to actually pay to, or not pay. You have to go and turn the water on, let it grow, turn the water on, let it grow. But like I said, pretty good beginner crop. You'll just phase out of it pretty quick, so it's also kind of a waste of an investment. That's why it's sitting at number 5. 4 on my list of my favorite crops to do. We're gonna have to go with canola here. It pays out pretty good, right? You got a high sell price. So like if we go to prices here, this menu system still atrocious, right? Canola, we're sitting at $2,000. That's very good. It has an added benefit of being a low yield crop. The reason why that's nice is because it's easier to scale up. You don't have to mess with your harvesters as much. So yes, you're not going to be making as much per field per se, but if you have a good operation going with AI, you're going to be able to scale it up pretty well. It makes good money. Like I said, the downsides are pretty heavy though, and there's definitely better crops to do, such as like some of the ones we'll talk about later, like soybeans. It doesn't do anything better than those. But the huge downsides of this one, and the reason why it's not higher, is one, the growth cycle is atrocious. It's like 8 months or something nonsense like that. It takes forever for a crop to be ready to harvest. Number two, like I said, the yield is pretty low. It's not necessarily the most enjoyable crop to do either because, like I said, it's just a grain crop. You're just harvesting it. Nothing too crazy with that. There's no added things you have to do with it. But the pros to it, obviously, you can make good money. It's scalable, and it's easy. It's simple. It's a low maintenance one. That's probably the best part is it is low maintenance. So as you scale up, you can kind of fire and forget. You don't have to check on it as much. And you can really get an operation pretty sizable doing a canola thing. Also, there is productions that utilize it. So it's good for that as well. So yeah, canola is sitting at number 4. We got some better ones coming up. So stay tuned for that. So this is my number 3 crop. This is going to be grass and all that goes with it. You know, silage, regular grass, any of the variants that go with grass. The reason why this is number 3 is because, first of all, it's pretty easy to scale up. You know, you can get bigger. It makes a lot of money, and you don't have growth cycles. You don't have to replant. The investment can be small, right? If we go into the equipment, you can get away with just the small mower and a forage wagon to get into it. That's about as cheap as you can possibly get, and you can grow that all the way into mowers and windrows and all that thing. Also, it's used for a lot of different things. There's a couple different steps which you can do, right? You can mow it, you could bale it, you could forage wagon, you can turn it into silage, you can turn it into hay, you can use it for animals. You know, it's got a whole bunch of different stuff you can do with it. So it's a good crop for enjoyability wise that way. It's pretty efficient as well. The growth cycle is really short. It's only 2 or 3 months, which is basically as good as it gets. Like I said, you don't have to replant it, you don't have to recultivate it, so you can just pump this stuff out. You can make a lot of money doing it as well, because you can get, you know, 3 or 4 harvests per year, and also in the time it takes you to plant and cultivate another field, you can have a whole nother harvest done. So even if you're not necessarily making as much per harvest, you're going to be getting more harvest per hour in doing grass than any other crop by far. The downside is it's harder to utilize the AI. The AI cannot bale for you, and it cannot rat for you, which is a huge downside and why it's not higher. You can't scale it up as high because you have to do that stage yourself. You can obviously have it mow yourself and windrow, but you will have to go through and manually bale it, so it's not a fire and forget. It does take some, at minimum, baling and wrapping, which can be slow and tedious. There's some slight ways around that, but nothing too crazy in that regard. But like I said, you make a lot of money with it. It's pretty enjoyable, but it is a beginner crop, too late crop, which is also nice. So, but yeah, so that's why grass is the number 3 crop. Number 2 crop that I like to do is soybeans. Now, soybeans are really, really good at making money. They have a very high sell price. I think it's like $3,400, $3,500, depending on the difficulty and the time of month, obviously. There's a good yield per field. They're easy to scale up, right? It's just a grain crop. You know, you can get a couple combines running. You can get as big a field as you want. Pretty easy to harvest. The AI can do all the work, all that stuff. The reason why it's not higher is simply because it's boring, right? There's nothing to do. You can literally just have the AI do everything. You can have the AI plant it, cultivate it, harvest it, fertilize it, all that stuff. You can just get a giant field and print money with it. So it's it's a little more in depth than, you know, doing a generator, but if you set it up right, not by much. But overall, really good crop. You're gonna make a ton of money doing it. It's a great starter crop because, you know, you're using a normal combine, which is cheap to get into. They scale up pretty well too, because I got this one here. You know, you can get a 14-meter header, even if you start on the small one. It scales up nice. You can use it with productions if you're into that. You know, there's soybean oil, which is something to get into, but overall, it's a pretty solid crop. Just like I said, it does get knocked down a little bit simply because you can't. There's not a lot to do with it, right? You just sit around and harvest it, let the AI do all the work. You can obviously do it yourself, but you know what I'm trying to say with that. So that's why it's number 2. Number 1, we will get into next. So the number 1 crop in Farming Simulator to me, and this is kind of a multi-step one, but I'm going to say it has to be corn. And there's a couple of reasons for that, right? So obviously the crop of corn is pretty diverse. You can forage harvest it like I am now. You can harvest it as regular corn. You can use it as chicken feed. You can do it all that stuff. That's kind of why I like it, right? But I really like doing silage. That's kind of like my favorite thing to do in the game. And it's the best way to do silage. It scales up pretty well. You can get a couple of these forage harvesters going. It's really fun to do with friends, right? Because you got one guy running the combine, or the forage harvester, and you got your 2 buddies trucking back and forth, one guy packing the pit. So if you got 2 or 3 buddies to play with, it's probably the best crop to do that with. If you're doing another one guy's kind of twiddling their thumbs while the other one's running the harvester. This one scales up very nicely with buddies. Silage makes a potload of money, maybe the best in the game. I haven't run the numbers on it necessarily, but it does seem like you make a lot of money. There's a couple steps involved. It's also, with silage, the capability to do silage, you're also going to be able to make different processes for that, right? You could bale it, you could pack it in the pit, kind of all the pros of grass, except for you can automate almost the whole process, except for packing the pit. which, you know, like I said, if you don't want to do that, you can also just sell it straight up as corn. So overall, it's just kind of a great crop. It is a little expensive to get into, which is kind of the only downside, right? You got your forage harvesters are expensive. There's kind of no way around that, but you can get away with just a normal forage header. So if I slide over to a corn header, you know, you can just get into that for pretty cheap. But if you're going to get into the actual harvesting, it is more expensive. This is more of a late stage crop, but I do prefer this, especially when you have the money. This is probably the best crop to get into. You could get into cotton or something like that, but again, that's if you're just going purely for money, I would just stick to soybeans. It's a little easier and a little less maintenance than cotton. A little cheaper to get into and scale up rather than dumping all your money in at once. Same with corn, you can scale up. So anyways, guys, thanks for watching. This video is kind of fun to make, you know, it's kind of my top 5 favorite crops that I like to do in Farming Simulator. Various reasons for that, like I said. So you got canola, you've got rice, you've got grass, you've got soybeans, and you've got corn. Those are kind of the best ones for me to do. So like I said, thanks for watching, guys. Peace out. Don't forget to like, favorite, subscribe, all that fun stuff.